Hello, hello, hello. We're back again. We're
Yes.
coming back from a quick break after I got a very bad case of the flu last week. But I'm now back again. I might be coughing a little bit throughout this talk. I'll do
Mhm.
my best job to mute myself. So, we're back here to talk about what's new in Agentic. We're talking about what's new in AI.
Yeah.
And I do believe while I was absent, you released a pretty cool feature for your company. So do you maybe want to
Yeah.
share that with us?
Yeah, can certainly do. It's not so much to show for because stuff happens in the background if you want so, which is kind of the idea. Going the next step from having engineers sitting in front of an IDE or Claude Code or whatever and doing things actively and interactively, going more into the direction of having, in the best case, everyone in the company going through the interfaces that they know, stuff like Trello or GitHub issues in our case, where they can kind of request a feature change or request a bug fix or just report a bug fix. Like they always do, and then an agentic coding system takes up this work and goes through the typical cycle. Just giving some feedback, creating an implementation plan for the bug fix, for the feature request. All the while, the users can stay in this conversation loop on the tooling, on the ticket tooling that we have in place. And this is an idea I was thinking about for a long time that really I want. In a sense, I always want to decouple the feature requirements that people in the company have from actual dev resources. I want to move this more into a direction of having an asynchronous process. And I built a prototype for this, a proof of concept, if you want. So it's technically it's nothing crazy. There is not a single new technological idea in this. It's just I think the way
Connecting
it
the
is
dots.
presented. So excuse me.
It's connecting the dots, really.
Yeah,
So putting
absolutely.
our thesis into practice that we had, that
Yeah.
everyone can be a coder now, and maybe we can even automate a lot of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the way we use it in the company, and I can start to share my screens. Again, it's not so fancy looking at it, but just so we have a little bit of context. There's a share screen. Yeah, so this was the first example where someone in the company, my colleague Reza, he's he knows a lot of stuff in the technical realm, but he's not a software engineer. He's not working in the software engineer team. He's from the product management team. He's not a coder, and he was the first person in the company that who realized the full feature end to end without interacting with our software development team, just
Nice.
using this GitHub issues integration that we set up, and it's working relatively simple from a user's perspective. So I'm not yet switching this to full auto mode, right? So I want to control it. So you have to create an issue, just like you would always do. And as you can see, he's really good at creating good issues. And then you everything is working through the labels, right? So GitHub has this label system where you can. So normally you would say something like, okay, this is a bug, this is a documentation issue, whatever. But you can make up your own labels, and so we have this product builder labels. And if you put an enabled label on the issue, then this is something that the agent in the background can see. It's really a simple cron job, so to speak. Every minute it looks goes through all the issues and looks for issues that are enabled for it to see and to use. and then it fetches it, reads the content, and we are under the hood. We are simply passing this on to Claude Code, an embedded Claude Code or an embedded Cursor CLI agent. It gets fed the contents from the issue, and then it goes through 2 phases. Basically, the first phase is to go into planning, or to provide a plan, an implementation plan. And this is all happening in the issue. You can go back and forth. And not only can the user go back and forth, but also the agent can go back and forth. So, for example, if you write an issue that is simply not clear, it's not really understandable or what shall be done, then the agent can simply ask questions and set this to feedback needed. That's another label. It sets the issue to feedback needed and asks the questions that it needs for clarification, and you can go back and forth with this. And from the other side, the human can also request updates to the plan. So you get a first plan, and maybe you don't like some detail in the plan, and you can go back and forth. And then at some point you say, again, through the labels, you say, okay, I'm approving this plan. I like this plan. I now want to have this plan implemented. And then the second phase starts. The agent pulls the ticket again with its own plan, basically. And then we switch to the pull request, where again we can go back and forth. I don't think Reza did this. No, in this case not. But you could go back and forth, look at the implementation, and ask questions, ask for improvements, and then it will iterate on it. So really just a normal workflow, as if you would be working with a remote developer that you can only talk with through issues and pull requests. It's not perfect. It's not perfect yet. It works for simple cases. It's still, you quickly get into the area of very technical stuff. For example, if you get a plan, it's a very engineering-focused plan that might be quickly overwhelming for whoever requested the feature. We do not yet have a functionality where you can test drive what was implemented. So what is still needed, for example, is that now Reza, who requested the feature, has some kind of link or whatever where he can go into a staging system and test drive what was developed for him and give feedback on that. So there are still some loose ends, but it's working okay, and we are making baby steps towards it. And yeah, and as I think I wrote it on LinkedIn, this is also part of my long-term vision, where I want the system to kind of feed itself. I think we talked about this last time we had this talk, where we are discussing. So what are inputs for software engineering? What are inputs for product development? Of course, it's people in the company waking up and having new ideas, but that's not the only one. You get feedback from your customers, from your users, from your production systems, from logs, etc. And we want to streamline all of this into another agentic system that, let's say, every 24 hours, it can distill what would be some useful bug fixes, some useful new features, and feed this into a system like this one here. And so you can automatically create new issues from your whole ecosystem, if you want so.
Sounds almost like you're building a copy of ProductOS, huh? Just kidding.
Could
be.
But
interesting. What model are you using behind that?
I played around with... I think the last iteration was Claude Sonnet 5.6, I think.
4.6, yeah.
4.6, I think. It's I have learned that it really depends on the code base that you are working on. So we definitely have some code bases now where we have so many tests, so much good documentation, so many guardrails, etc., that we can switch to dumber models, if you want so. And there are some where we really need the full intelligence, if you want so.
Yeah, I'm seeing that as well. What is really, really interesting to me is also, are you using an API key for that? Probably, right? So the bot you built
Wait,
is talking
yeah. In
directly
this
to
case,
the Anthropic
it's
API.
API based. Yeah, yeah.
How's the cost side looking? Because that's something I found that
Terrible.
it really
Absolutely terrible.
explodes super
Yeah,
quickly, right?
yeah.
The output token pricing for the new Anthropic models, it's, to me at least,
It's
crazy.
unholy. Yeah, it's crazy. We are currently in a switch at the company. So in the past few months and weeks, I was always going to my colleagues in software engineering and say, please use the latest, greatest, best models. I want to see
Yep.
them use them. And now I'm switching back to, hey, can you maybe go back
To a balance.
make it a little bit more balanced? So in February, I think it was mostly me and another colleague. For the first time, we broke the $2,000 in less than 1 month limit
Yep.
on Cursor. Yeah, and that was mostly because we used Opus 4.5 and then 4.6, and it's a lot. It's really a lot.
I think that's quite interesting because now we're not talking about the fact that we need to enable people to work agentic anymore. We don't really, or it's not the main topic anymore. And, you know, we really have to now think about, is this going to be more costly than hiring another person? Which
Absolutely.
that switch happened quite quickly. And I think why it happened is because the big labs are really pushing the boundaries with frontier models. And I feel like they have stopped subsidizing the models as much, right? So I think before what they did is really eat up a lot of the cost, and now they're also forwarding this to the user.
Yeah.
And what is interesting in that case to me is that the open source models are quickly catching up as well. So you see models like Kimi K25 or Quencoder catching up quite quickly, or also what's it called? I think GLM45 from ZAI. A lot of models, right? But the main takeaway is that it might also now be more viable to put 1 or 2 Mac Studios on each developer's desk and just let them work with the open source models there, because they're also quite capable nowadays. And when we see that shift in the cost side happening, you quickly have to adjust. So again,
Absolutely.
one more parameter that is quickly changing, which doesn't make it easier, right? Doesn't make it easier to work with this this tooling. But also I see a lot of talks happening, especially on Twitter, that people are quickly switching from Opus to Codex. So it still seems like we haven't found that one model that works. We haven't found that one provider you can stick with. Do you also see that in your company right now?
So personally, I'm always switching around. Actually, and it's a very scientific method I'm using. It's pure gut feeling.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know. I can't explain it. It's very subconscious that, I feel like now I should talk with GPT from OpenAI, because I don't know. It's more about having a talk, and if I have some really, really nasty hardcore bug, then I'm switching to Opus and all this kind of stuff. But I'm totally on your side. It was always my assumption that basically we are currently coasting on VC money at the end of the day, and we are yet to see the true cost of a token. And as you said, it's definitely going to change a lot, and it's not only going to change the financial side. It's also going to change the way how we use this stuff. And I think everything is coming together in a kind of way, finding that right balance between, let's say, it's not public, is not the right word, but API provided models and local models, finding the right balance between putting the energy in getting the context better, the tooling of your code bases, the guardrails and documentation in your code bases. With every dollar you put into getting that a little bit better, you can put less dollars into the model usage. And I think this is going to be the mission of tech leads basically over the next few months.
Balancing that.
Yeah, to find that balance and to invest in the right areas. And the third aspect actually, where with tokens becoming more expensive, you want you always want the optimal balance between stochastic stuff in your applications and deterministic stuff in your applications. So when tokens are cheap, you can do nearly everything with an LLM, right? You can go like, I need to find out if this is an even or uneven number. The LLM can do this too, right? I mean, yeah, it can, but maybe switch back to good old code for those kinds of stuff and find a good mix between where is your code in the lead and where is the LLM in the lead. For example, in Product Builder, all this issue handling, finding issues that have a certain label, then deciding what to do with them and this kind of stuff. This is all just plain old code. And I could have just thrown everything into the model and have it make the decisions, and it would probably work stable enough to be production ready, but it just feels wrong to have this deterministic stuff handled by an LLM. So
yeah, I get what you mean. And there's also this running gag of basically now we're paying $400 for 16 gigabytes of RAM just to have this even odd comparison of letting the LLM decide what happens there. Yeah, so I think you're right. It's about striking a balance. And speaking of which, maybe I can also share my screen quickly here. So you should be able to now see the Product OS screen. So this was quite interesting to me. Let me just quickly sign in here. And I guess one password doesn't like me today. There we go. So in here, I also thought about what is the real price of doing this. So you can see I built a little bit more here, actually putting it into production now and having a first, demo release. And I built this flow mode here, which does quite a bunch of things. So you can see that I have a bunch of agents down here that you can work with, and you can do stuff like, let's use the code agent, and let me just quickly move this overlay here, and say, let's work on a GitHub repository that is public on my account. So just for fun, I built an app there that basically does Urban Sports Club, but for kids activities, because my brother told me that basically his kids, they want to try a lot of stuff, but they never stick to it. So I thought this would be a cool idea. And what it does is that it now will actually check out the repository. It will enable you to code in here and use this agent to, code with Product OS. And then I thought, this is quite interesting. Let's go down that route. What will happen when I work with this? And you can also, do anything else really. So what I showed before, let's use the discovery agent. Do we have any data on a, let's say, feature that lets kids discover new activities? And that will also go off and run doing the whole discovery stuff. And I think that's quite interesting to have it in that way, to work in a, that's why I called it flow mode, to work in a flow basically, right? So you want to work in a way that you have this ongoing chat. So basically how you work with Claude Code or Codex today, but in a UI so that it's accessible to everyone. And what I found doing this is that it works great. So it's a very nice idea. You can hand off between the agents. You can pass around that context, and it really plays along very, very nicely. It enables non-technical people to work with this in a very, very easy way. But what would you think? How much do I need to charge the user if they want to work with this on a daily basis? I'm very eager to find out what your best guess is there.
I mean, if I imagine someone, let's say from product or from software engineering, doesn't really make a huge difference. I think working on this their whole workday, 5 days a week, I mean, then we are probably in the area that I'm experiencing right now with an IDE, like Cursor. And yeah, we are probably going into the 4 figures per month area, right?
Yeah, so what I found is if you really use this extensively, so in the way that I would suggest you use this tool is that you end up with $100 to $200 a day.
A day.
And
Wow.
that is a day, yeah. And that isn't really sustainable, right? But that way you really, really see how much the big providers are subsidizing the tools right now. So if I think about how often I run into the context window limit in Claude Code, every time that happens, that basically means I just spend anywhere between $15 to $30 with Anthropic in inference cost. So think about that, how often that happens to you, because the output tokens are sitting at, I think, $15 per 1 million tokens for Opus right now. And the context window, I think when they compact, they're anywhere between 250K and 1 million tokens. So that's $15 going out the window every time. And I never really paid attention to that until I really tried to, put it on Product OS and thought, how much do I actually need to charge people? And the interesting part is all of the other agents are really, really cheap. So doing all of the discovery and doing all of the spec writing, doing the strategy alignment, all of that is super cheap because you don't need an awful lot of context. Maybe discovery is the worst offender there because you need to ingest a lot of data because you really want to have a comprehensive picture.
Yeah.
But coding in comparison is super expensive. And I didn't, I had an idea of that. Let's put it like that. I suspected that this is going to be expensive, but that it's going to be that expensive, that was a surprise to me, I have to say.
Right.
So
Hey,
I'm really
Ingmar
wondering
wrote a comment I just saw.
Yeah. Let's show it here. So you see there could be a layer between the human and the expensive LLM where a very cheap LLM compresses the human's prompt into something machine readable, and the same on the way back. That's quite interesting. It's a nice take. I think a lot of the things we see right now that we need to solve, really, you were on the right track there. Let me put it like that, and let me begin the sentence with that. I think we're using it very, very extensively right now because we haven't yet found the right way to deal with it. So we just let it run everywhere. And what I also found, and this, I think I talked about this briefly before, is that we're doing an agentic rewrite of a backend. And what I saw is that whenever you get in the way of the agent and try to outsmart it as well, it doesn't really work. Don't know if you've seen that as well. So when I tried to come up with these super nice prompts, when I tried to give it a lot of guardrails, I actually had diminishing returns.
Okay. That's interesting. Do you have a concrete example? But I'm not sure that I experienced that, and but maybe I wasn't looking right, huh?
So what we tried to do is spawn a team of agents. So basically have a multi-agent setup that do dedicated tasks. So you had one explorer, you had one worker, you had one reviewer, and all of these were running on prompts that were very specific to the project.
Okay.
So basically I told it that the review agent, it should always look into the test environment of the existing application and then compare the outputs of the rewrite to make sure that we reach feature parity. And I told the Explorer agent that it should look at the old backend code to make sure we're not missing any edge cases. And I have to say, this really didn't work out. So when I did a very, very stupid prompt, basically saying, okay, this is what we're going to do, this is the implementation plan, let's get to work on it and let the existing agents just work in the way that they were intended to, that were way better.
Interesting. Okay. I'm definitely also at least to this day, I'm definitely in team maximize the guardrails, right? That's interesting. Maybe I need to look into this a bit more. I basically never do any benchmarking, right? I'm just working every day on the stuff, and I'm
Go
not
with the
really
flow.
comparing that much. But I hope to find the time to really, sharpen the saw a little bit and really think about it in a more scientific way on how to handle this kind of stuff. But for now, I can say I made good experiences with having lots of context, lots of hand holding, lots of guardrails. But it's an interesting take. I will look into that. That's interesting, really.
I think it's a very, very thin line to walk on. Ingmar has a good take on that. He calls it README MD. I usually call it Agents MD, where you represent the current state of the application in depth and basically give the LLM an insight into what you are building, how you are building it, what the guidelines are into basically the coding process. And that works quite well for me. But everything beyond that, when I try to, come up with a super smart prompt that has everything in there, that tries to guess everything ahead of time, that's when things fail for me. So I try to keep the prompts very, very short and say, just come back to me every time you have a question or need to, make a decision. And then I do it in a very interactive way. And that feels way, way better for me. But I can't really put a finger on it as well, right? So it's also more of a gut feeling for me. But I saw that when I compared the two approaches. So I had one branch where I tried to set everything up front, have a very tight harness, so to speak. And on the other hand, I had a very short prompt and basically just gave it the context of my code base. And compared the two results, the one where I did less work up front actually worked way better.
And we are probably also talking about Opus 4.6 here, right?
Opus 4.6 as well as Codex 5.3. So I'm using both in tandem and try to bench them against each other. And what I found is that Codex is better at sustaining long-running tasks without my input, whereas Opus is much more eager to talk to me. So basically involving me at every corner and saying, hey, how do you want to do this? How do you want to do that? Do you allow me to do this? How should we approach that? So it's more interactive. But that's also why when working with Codex, I felt that the upfront guesswork doesn't work as well, because it might go off on a 2-hour journey coming back with a bunch of code it wrote saying, hey, I finished everything. And then I look into it and say, okay, you took like 5 wrong turns in the meantime. And it never questioned that, basically.
Yeah.
So that's also what I saw.
Okay, but then maybe I misunderstood you a little bit initially. So at the end of the day, the agents had strict guardrails and they had a lot of guidance. It's just the way. How did you get to that guardrails? Not upfront, but during the so there was a back and forth, and you did make the calls and you did make the decisions, right?
Yeah, if you compare it, I want to say one approach is how you would work with a developer in your company, basically agreeing on a almost contract upfront and saying this is what we're looking for. And the other thing is having more of a co-creation where you start going back and forth with the agent. And what I also tried is to alter the agent's system prompts, basically, and say, let me extend what you already have and let me build a specialized agent just for this project. And this is what failed on me. So the specialized agents, they really didn't work all that well. What works quite well is having, this agents MD where I say, this is how we want to work. This is the contract we agree upon. And then every time I want to implement something, we just gather the requirements and success criteria. This is what works quite well. When I go beyond that, really trying to dig into the details, this is where I think I'm trying to outsmart the model, and this doesn't work.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. I will take a closer look. We have another one from Ingmar. Is there a new task?
So He's saying when I start a new task, I give a rough prompt to the LLM and tell it not to start implementing, but fill a task in with what it understood and ask questions, and then rinse and repeat until you're happy with it. And this is basically also what I'm talking about. So this back and forth feels way more productive because it gets way closer to the outcomes I'm looking for than, again, trying to guess everything up front, because then the model can, or the agent can build its own context from there. And it feels to me like the labs are actually doing a pretty good job at enabling the LLMs to work in that way. And the most recent models like Codex and Opus, they were also trained on working with agentic coding tools, right? So these are the first models that we're seeing that are not only trained on a corpus of data, but also they're trained to work with a very specific harness. So you will see when working with them that they will spawn dedicated sub-agents. They know exactly how the harness works, so they're getting more and more specialized. So I want to say we're almost moving away a little bit from just, throwing raw power, raw compute at the problem. And now we're starting for the first time ever to harness the other tools that we have and optimize for them. So I think that's what I saw there, is that I'm trying to outsmart this optimization, and that doesn't really work. Why would it in the end? The big labs are probably better at doing that, but I'm really moving back on that again, saying, okay, I'm just using what they're giving to me because that seems to work out better. And again, as things are still moving pretty quickly, I don't see the point in trying to optimize it myself too much yet. So I'm basically really trying to have this relationship with the coding agents where I treat it as a coworker that we're doing pair programming with still.
Yeah, makes sense. I understand. This question came up recently in one of my WhatsApp groups, where a friend of mine was a bit frustrated because, if I understood it correctly, he kind of wanted to get into this mode where, hey, let's just have a talk. You ask the questions. I don't want to give you that much upfront information. And I think it was Opus, but not 100% sure. It just didn't ask back a lot, and that was a bit frustrating. Do you have any hints on how to get it to really get into the flow of having it ask a lot of questions?
Quite funnily, actually, I had a friend over at my apartment, and we also did a bit of, pair programming and just working on his project. And what we found is that he would always try to write these very sophisticated prompts again, right? So he would try to do everything up front and be very, very smart about it and try to, cover all of the eventualities. And I have to say, the prompts I write, they're quite stupid, really. They're very casual. They're very, I just talk to the model rather than giving a very specific set of instructions and trying to be super professional about it. And he was quite surprised by that. And he saw that these very casual prompts, they work out in a way better manner because the models are probably more prepared to handle those prompts rather than a very, very long prompt where you specify exactly what you're doing. So I would ask your friend, what does your prompt look like? Are you being overly specific, or are you including too much context? Because that can also kill productivity if you're loading too much context. If you're putting in too many MCP servers, for example, that will also have diminishing returns. So my best word of advice is be super casual about it. A lot of times I'm actually using voice mode now, and I'm just talking to the coding agent as well. To, when you're writing everything down, you're being a bit more, not as creative, I want to say, right? So when I'm talking to you, it's very different than when I'm writing to you, because I have the chance to go back, delete what I said, and think about it again and have a better idea, so to speak. I would recommend be very casual about it. Try to have a conversation with the model.
So in a sense, you are saying that the trick to maximize productivity and effectiveness is to pretend being a vibe coder without being a vibe coder, right?
No, I think vibe coding is actually still very good. So I think that, also heard it called not agentic coding, but agentic engineering, I think is the new not so derogatory term. But I think actually vibe coding is great. Just try to be less smart about it. And as Ingmar aptly put it, manually writing extensive prompts is borderline stupid. And I want to agree on that. I'm on that same chair, because that's literally what we have the models for, right? So having just a back and forth conversation, it works quite well. And you can take advantage of whatever the big labs have been doing for the newest models without even being aware of it. And that's, I think, the magic sauce in that process. Because I usually don't know what optimizations and fine tunings they did, but I get to reap the harvest of that because I just talked to the model. It sounds so stupid, but you know this midwit meme? Have you ever heard of that? Let me show it to you. Give me 1 second here to start my screen share again. And I think this is pretty accurate. It's also very funny if you ask me. So basically this midwit meme, it has on the left, it has this drooling guy, right? That he doesn't know anything. He's super low IQ and he just, does all of the stupid stuff. And then you have the guy in the middle trying really, really hard to outsmart everyone else and do a lot of stuff where, it's supposedly smart. And on the right side, you have this Jedi guy. Right. And he's doing all of the stupid stuff again. And I feel like I've crossed that middle point where I try to be smart about it. I just, use my knowledge of architecture, use my knowledge of how to build products, and let the model do everything else, basically. So I try to focus on what I'm good at and let the model roam freely on everything else. And I really feel like this is working way better than trying to outsmart it. And this might seem counterintuitive at first.
No, it's okay. But it still means you how do I put it? You are a bit less, a bit more casual, yeah, a bit less smart in when you have this dialogue of what you want to achieve, feature-wise, I assume, etc., outcome-wise, if you want to. But are you still very strict in terms of, I don't want that kind of pattern in my code base. I don't want those 300 libraries pulled in to decide if it's an even or odd number. You are still strict in that area or not? Or are you casual there too?
I wouldn't necessarily call it strict, but I do oftentimes question the model and say, hey, why did you do that? This seems kind of weird to me. And I say it in that exact phrasing, right? I say, this looks super weird. Isn't it stupid to pull in a library for that? Couldn't we just implement this on our own? Or it seems like you're caught in a trap where you're repeating yourself. I do this a lot, yes.
Okay.
But it's not so much a rule book that I put down, but more a general oversight, I want to say. So I'm watching what the model produces, and whenever I see that something feels off, that's when I start to question it. And once it's done doing that, I say, okay, what can we do now so this doesn't happen in the future anymore? And that's when I get into this iteration loop of where we improve the agent's MD together. So I always see the agent as a co-creator rather than my execution arm.
Understood. And that's cool. That's very insightful.
Nice. We're putting in hard overtime again. 10 minutes almost. So do you have anything that you want to get off the top of your head today? Or is that it?
In our backlog, or did we talk about it? I don't think we talked about it. This whole Dark Factory stuff. We did not yet talk about this here, right?
I don't think so.
It's still on the backlog, and maybe next time we come to talk about it, because I think this is really, it borders on esoteric, but again, my gut feeling is that that's where the future is, and this product builder that I showed is it's like 2% of that idea. And maybe we talk about this more in the next talk in detail. But just one thing that I took away from this is, we talked about how expensive tokens are becoming, but it's still kind of cheap to do stuff that you wouldn't do in the past. So, for example, if you have external dependencies, for some month ago, I implemented something where where I had to integrate with Google Calendar and Microsoft Calendar, and it's always a pain in the ass. You have those external dependencies, and if you want to really test something end to end, you kind of need to integrate with them. And often they don't have a sandbox or demo or test mode and this kind of stuff. And now you can, and this is just one small idea of this dark factory pattern, is that you can just build a mock-up of Office 365, and you can build a mock-up of Google Calendar and just make it behave like the real thing, and this kind of stuff becomes possible now. Yeah, it's going to cost some tokens, right? But you can, I'm not sure I'm getting this right. They call it the virtual twin universe or something like this. Like you build the whole universe that your application lives in.
Yeah.
You just rebuild it. You just
actually, now that you say that, something comes to my mind that I saw this week. So I think it was a Cloudflare CTO. He rebuilt Next.js as a open source library.
Yeah, that's related, but not the same thing. Yeah.
Which that was quite interesting to me, because he basically said, I hate the vendor lock-in that Vercel is creating. And he just put up a bunch of coding agents that tried to replicate Next.js as open source with all of the features without having this vendor lock-in. Super interesting as well. And there was this whole shitstorm that happened on Twitter because he put it as it's in production already. That turned out to be a fake. Then the Vercel CEO came out and he said, oh, there's some security issues in your code base. And then another guy came out and said, hey, I reported this security issue 2 years ago that it is Next.js. So it really is a very good duplicate of the original. Super funny.
Yeah.
That just came to my mind. I had a very good chuckle about that.
That's South American soap opera level of entertainment, actually.
Yeah. So but that's maybe one more thing that I wanna say. I do believe we talked about the OpenClaw hype before here on the stream. I'm actually still fully in it, and I'm doing a meetup here in Hamburg for the OpenClaw community. I think we have 60 signups already. So if anyone wants to be part of that, you can head on over to my LinkedIn, and there is a link to luma.com where you can sign up. I do believe we're very close to hitting the limit where I actually have a wait list, but just shoot me a message that you are a viewer of the live stream, and I'll gladly approve you. I think this is very, very interesting as well. The things happening there, the stuff you can build with OpenClaw is also very interesting. So I have my own dedicated laptop for that now that runs all of the stuff. And first of all, it's moving so fast because they're now also sponsored by OpenAI and all of that good stuff, that you can do a lot with it. So you remember maybe when we talked about this the first time, I had to do some of my invoice grabbing from my emails and put that in my bookkeeping application. Now I'm actually using it for a bunch of different things as well, like doing some monitoring of all of the projects that I have live, doing some of the merge requests that I have there. So it really, really is becoming a very extensive tool set. And interestingly enough, and we had that on our agenda for today as well, I just didn't touch on it, Anthropic killed that, right? So they threw out OpenClaw of the Claude subscription and blocked it, basically, as with all external tools, probably because of the inference cost. But they're now building the same thing with Claude Cowork. So they're quickly expanding on that. And I'm wondering if we're about to see a big new model from them hitting the market that they're also using internally already, where they're building all of these product features, because it really seems interesting to me that they drop all of these features in a couple of days. But with that, enough gossip for today, I want to say.
Right.
We're hitting the 45-minute mark, so let's wrap it up, I want to say.
Great. Okay.
So thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you, Ingvar, for actively contributing. Love to see that, and we'll see you next week.
See you soon. Bye-bye. Have a good time.